All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Katrina McAfee. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at Association Analytics. We'll give it just a minute for everyone to get logged on before we get started. Our fun question for the day. We were talking about how, such a rapid pace of technology coming out over the last few decades. And we're curious what everyone's first piece of technology you ever used. So, that could be a computer. I was also thinking video games, like mine was Oregon Trail on my mom's work DOS computer. That was my first. Lots of other pieces of technology. So let us know what yours, Commodore 64.
All right.
Oh, Lauren. Well, it makes you feel better, Lauren. I thought I was much older than you. Nice.
A lot of Ataris here.
All right, yeah. Old school Nintendo. That was definitely my first video game.
I think the first system I started working in was the TRS-80. We were trained to program this kind of line feed.
All right.
See, I don't know what most of these are. So both computers.
Oh, that's a Mac.
Yeah, and is that a calculator, or was that an early PC from TI? I think all the calculators are.
Oh yeah.
My dad went up. All right.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's get started. Okay, thanks for joining everyone. Again, I'm Katrina McAfee with Association Analytics. Today you're joining us for turning your static iMIS reports into actionable insights. So I'm sure there's tons of iMIS users on here. If you're not an iMIS user, I think you'll still get a lot out of this because there are a lot of similarities and a lot of AMSs and pulling insights out of them. So we'll be talking a lot about that today. We have Bill Conforti is our SVP of Strategy and Solutions. He will be our host today. And then we have two very special guests from the American Counseling Association joining us. I'm going to pass it over to Chip to introduce himself.
So hi, I'm Chip Flater. I'm Director of IT and IT Security for American Counseling Association. I've been here for a little bit more than 4 years, and I'm joined by MJ.
Hi, I'm MJ, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence and Strategy at ACA, and it's been about 3 years for me. Started as a business analyst and kind of moved over into the strategy side of the house.
Awesome. Okay. So look, this is as we had in the title, it's kind of a specialty webinar. So I guess it's maybe primarily for iMIS users, but I think there's something for everyone here. We're going to pick up a discussion that's been going on for a long time. It's like what should be done inside of iMIS or your AMS, and what should be done outside. So we're going to discuss some solutions outside of iMIS, talk about ACA's experience with that specifically. And the agenda will go something like this. We have the intro and polls to get started. MJ is going to tell us all you need to know about the American Counseling Association. We'll dive into their iMIS usage and landscape just a little bit. And then like the basic format of these is we look at kind of like how it was, how it is now, and then very briefly a look ahead. And that's specifically with respect to getting data out, taking action on that data, and kind of looking at reporting and related things. We'll have a special section of pro tips with MJ and Chip at the end. And Q&A is not really a formal thing at the end. I really want to invite everyone to participate all the way through. We've got a lot of people on today, so hoping for some good conversation. Okay, very quickly, just about A2. So we are Association Analytics. We are the developers of the analytics platform called Acumen and all of the related services that go around that. So that includes things like data governance, some data quality, and all of the things that you would expect to implement and successfully use an analytics product. Okay, so let's go to our poll question. And the question today is, your biggest challenge, right? Which represents your biggest challenge to getting useful data and insights from iMIS? And so we got data structure, integrations, right? Data quality, data cleansing, reporting, access and security. No takers on security so far, Chip. Training and support, and other, right? Other could be, hey, tell us your other biggest challenge, or it could be that you are an expert and you've not experienced any challenges. It's all smooth sailing, and we'd love to hear from you if that's the case as well. All right, and give it like 5 more seconds to get those answers in. All right. So we have, okay, sharing the results, that's great, right? So we have data structure and integration. Maybe you didn't word that one exactly correctly. I would expect integrations to be a little bit higher, but we got 16%. Almost half said data cleansing and data quality. About a quarter of us, 26%, said reporting and analytics, and 8% said training and support. One person said security. Okay, so what do you guys think? Anybody surprised by any of this? No?
Is that to us?
Yeah, it's you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, actually, that aligns pretty much with what I was expecting. Data cleaning and quality is, I mean, no matter where I am, is probably the -- topic that's brought up.
Okay.
And it has a cascading effect. If your data is dirty, your reporting is going to be difficult. You perhaps may blame, you know, the other issues that you're experiencing with that data quality as well.
Yeah, it's not right. The validation process for us was kind of the most intense and lengthy process of getting through all of that cleaning and structure. Really impacted kind of where we are today.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So that's to me, that's a little surprising, right? I would have again, it may be that the wording is a little bit awkward, but I would have expected the integrations piece to give people a little bit more trouble, and then training and support. That one, you like the overall issue of data literacy, I think is pretty big. Maybe it's not the biggest, right, for anyone, but I think everyone has that one to a degree. So Chip, Raphael in the chat says, biggest challenge is IQA Builder is limited and they're running complex reports all the time. Can you relate to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. IQA is limited, and you have to get real creative with your business objects, and build complicated views, and then leverage those. But that in turn can put a lot of stress on your SQL Server.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. So it's really good to have both of you on, have sort of two different looks at the same thing. I mean, you know, for me personally, a little bit technical, but some of the nuances and things like that I don't normally think about. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm sure there's a lot on the call that are in the same boat. So okay, so we're going to go to talking about ACA briefly. So MJ, tell us about ACA.
Sure. American Counseling Association, ACA, we serve about 60,000 members, and those are licensed professional counselors. Those are educators, practitioners, everyone kind of serving in the mental health field. And we serve them with advocacy, continuing education, career building opportunities, industry insights. And really in any given year, we see maybe about 5 to 10% of our members come to our in-person events. So it's kind of the work of all of our staff to continually increase engagement from every touch point of the member journey. And we're about a medium-sized association. We've got some new leadership rolling in and an ever-growing staff of about 60 people right now. Kind of the landscape of ACA.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, that 5 to 10% number, is that been steady over time, or has it been a decline or increase, or where we've got?
Relatively steady and growing until obviously the pandemic hit and kind of threw a monkey wrench into the situation. So obviously post-pandemic, we've been kind of rebuilding our attendee numbers for in-person and have been kind of balancing the virtual versus in-person component there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think a lot of people can relate to that. So just curious that if anyone in the chat is like fully back, right? Post pandemic, their numbers are bounced back completely, or maybe even surpassed what they were. Would love to hear from you on that. And congratulations if that's the case for you. Okay, so Chip, then we're going to go. We're going to talk about iMIS specifically, right? So just give me a sense for your overall tech stack and the team that you have that supports it.
Sure. So we run iMIS. It's our central hub. It's our center of truth, if you will, in the data world. And then we have a number of integrations that we work with as things like our meeting events, technology, A2, of course, as well as Zoom even.
Yeah.
Internally, we have 3 people that focus on iMIS and iMIS work, myself and 2 others.
All right. Tell me about the level of customization, right? One of the things I hear from iMIS, not just iMIS, I shouldn't say iMIS customers, right? It's really customers of every AMS there is that over time they've become highly customized, right? To the point that it's no longer useful.
Yeah, absolutely. It was part of the business model for iMIS when they first came out, that it was highly customizable. It's difficult to create an AMS that's for every association out there. So when I first came here, we had quite a bit of customization. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say it was probably about a 6. And it was interfering with our upgrade paths. Luckily, with some great partners out there, we were able to eliminate almost all of our customizations. I would say we're probably around a 2 now out of 10. And we focus on extending upon the product as opposed to customizing it. Our upgrades before would take about 2 weeks. They take about 2 hours now.
Awesome. Tell me, so just this is in the weeds a little bit, but just for, it's kind of a nuance here, but tell me what's the difference between an extension and a customization?
So a good example is anything that works with iMIS's API. Their API, it's a way to communicate with the system so that you can input or draw data out per iMIS's requirements. So the system connected to the API is kind of agnostic to whether or not it's iMIS or not. It just knows that it needs to put data in one way or get data out another way. And so a customization would be something more along the lines of like bending iMIS to do things that it wasn't necessarily made to do.
Yeah, nobody's probably done that.
Oh gosh, no.
Okay. So tell me, what would you say is, if you had to talk about something that's working best when it comes to the ACA and using iMIS, what would you say is working best?
I think bringing everything together through our integrations, I think our integrations really have raised our business intelligence quite a bit. It's broken down a lot of the silos between our various departments. iMIS is great at some key features, right? Customer relationship management, billing, things like that, as well as, I mean, it's actually pretty good at certain types of reports. And then we bring in the other systems to help kind of fill out our needs, if you will.
Yeah, okay. And what about taking the other side of that? What would you say are some of your biggest challenges?
I say a question that came up. We're on the latest version of iMIS right now, by the way. We're on 20.26.22, whatever, patch Z. Don't have it in front of me right now, but repeat your question again. I'm sorry.
I was just asking about the challenges, right? So we talked about what's working best and what are what are some things, or the one thing that's maybe not working as well?
I think data quality is probably one of our biggest issues. We have a lot of duplicate records. Those people on the phone right now, or people who are watching, could probably relate. We have a lot of people that instead of logging in would prefer to just build another web record. It's called a web record, and then you get a duplicate record. So that's probably one of our biggest challenges. The reporting is while it's very good in some areas, it's lackluster in some of the others.
Okay. Go ahead, MJ.
I was going to add on to that. I was going to say, yeah, the reporting for what it is, reporting, which is looking at what has been, is typically pretty helpful with iMIS. So we can look at things like specific coupon codes or take a look at, very specific things that have happened in the past. But in terms of the path forward and what's to come, it's a little bit less helpful in terms of being able to predict things that are about to happen for the sake of our members.
All right. So Chip, any on the spot, and we have not talked about this until right now. Any we're skipping ahead. The pro tips are at the end, but any tips on how to reduce some of those data quality issues that you talked about?
Oh, just honestly get at it. Don't just talk about it. Make it part of your process, make it part of your policies internally, and get at it. There's some great programs out there, both out of the box with iMIS as well as third-party systems that can help dedupe your system. Make it part of your day-to-day and stay on it.
Awesome. Totally agree. In fact, we did a whole hour-long webinar, which was essentially that point. You made it in about, I don't know, 10 seconds, and we spent a whole hour on it. And that was actually a pretty good one. Okay. So Natalie is asking, are you using iMIS EMS?
No, we're not. We're a holdout, and we're going to hold out for as long as possible.
Okay. All right. So you brought up integrations, and having just come from the NIAC conference last week, and so maybe some people on the call were there. We talked about this idea of these point-to-point integrations with the AMS, and so it sounds to me like this arrangement, right, or something similar to that is, has worked pretty well for you, right? Cited integrations as a strength. The one thing is that each one of those arrows is kind of its own thing, and it's can be expensive and kind of complex to maintain that, right? But there are some pros to this. It's familiar, right? Everybody only really only goes to one place because that's the place where all the data is, and they know that that's whatever data you're going to have access to, that's where you're going to get it. And generally speaking, once you know how to use it, it's going to be pretty fast. Some of the things that we talk about, I'm using the word cons kind of just loosely, right? They're not necessarily cons of this architecture or this arrangement as much as they are sort of contrast to what you would have with an external repository, right? So it's going to be your transactional data, which of course is going to be in the other way as well, but it's the unstructured and other types of data as well. Those integrations can be costly. It does kind of limit scalability in the sense that you have to either build them directly or bring in a partner. And then, as MJ said, some of the analytics can be a bit limited. So that's what we would call the traditional model. And then one of the other things we talked about, and this was really useful, I thought, which are the ways that you can share data, right? Or ways that you can connect other data sources to iMIS. And mostly this is talking about bringing data into iMIS, right, as that central source of truth. But there can be cases where it's bidirectional, right? So of course you can always do manual uploads. Still a lot of that going on, right? If it doesn't change that often, or if it's in it originates in a spreadsheet, you need to get into iMIS, you can do that manual upload. A lot of integrations are just single sign-on, right? Not really any big data going back and forth. There are bridges that are with specific products that you can get. There's a lot of solutions now are this middleware or no code, kinds of solutions where you're still doing the blue arrows, but you're doing multiple blue arrows at a time through a centralized type of hub. You can do custom integrations, right? I'm sure there's some some on the call that are in that business. They'd be happy to build custom integrations for you. And then the last one, which is what the business that we're in and kind of what we're talking about today, is data warehouse. And that's where essentially we're looking at a central repository that's external to iMIS. So it looks something like this. iMIS is still going to be the big major data source for that, but then you have other things like your LMS or your community, other types of data that may not necessarily live in iMIS, and all of that is centralized in the warehouse and then provided to your staff and your chapters and so forth. And in that case, we have some pros. The decision making, the breadth of the decisions, and maybe the speed that you can get to the decision is maybe a little better. It's definitely more scalable in terms of adding new data sources. Chip will talk a little bit later about some advanced analytics that he's been working on. So it's a really good source of data for that. And in the long term, the ROI is really good, but there is short-term costs, right? So there's some upfront costs that you wouldn't necessarily have if you push things back to iMIS. And then maybe the number one con, right? Again, the cons in both of these are relative, but learning another tool, right? When already adoption on the tools you have is maybe a little suspect for many of us, that's kind of a problem. So, okay. So Chip or MJ, anything to add to this idea of the AMS or iMIS as the central source of truth versus the idea of moving that, at least with respect to some decisions, into a separate warehouse and going that route? Any comments on that?
I guess I'll just say it was a helpful exercise for us in validation of this whole process, just revisiting our data governance. So like kind of building from the ground up, remembering things that were written down years and years ago. It's long and arduous, but it's fully worth it just for that alone.
And I'd add that moving information to your data warehouse allows you to move some of your processing power to the data warehouse as well, including report writing. We have some pretty complex reports that can lead to degradation of the performance of our server. So we want to keep iMIS doing what it does and does well, and move some of those reporting stressors, if you will, over to the data warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree on that. So Chip, Robin is asking, and I know that this could maybe be its own webinar with a whole hour dedicated to this. But what are the main reasons why you're holding out on the move to EMS?
The main reason has to do with SQL access, or granular access to our data, and it has a lot to do with our reporting requirements that we have internally. The EMS doesn't allow for that kind of access to SQL. So we're able to go in and generate views and business objects for IQA very quickly in our environment, as opposed to out in the EMS cloud.
Tracy says, EMS allows access if you use the hybrid model. Not really a question, but just a comment. I actually don't, I can't speak to that. I'm not an expert in that, but if anybody has a comment on that, that would be great. It says you can move to the cloud and maintain your server's access. So I can't.
I wasn't aware of that.
I can't agree or disagree with that. So Rafaela says we won't move to the iMIS cloud because of the exact same reason, right? We need direct access to the SQL database. So yeah, so Tracy, if you want to put that in the chat so everybody can have access, and maybe you can hook up and provide us all with some insights. Thank you for that. Okay, so after that, we're going to move into like the kind of like the how it was section, right? So this is specific to ACA, and this is like the pre Acumen era. So when everything was old and looked like this guy here. And what was the model that you asked us about, Chip? Is this you mentioned it earlier today?
I was asking if this was a TRS-80, but no, it's a Wang.
Okay. Yeah. I see there's actually a piece of Dell hardware there, which I hadn't noticed before. So it's interesting. Dell's been around longer than you think. Okay, so let's start then with how it was. So when so now, you know, and it's skipping to how it is, right? You have Acumen, you have some of the reporting going on there, but when you relied exclusively on iMIS for reports, what were the most common? What was requested most often?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, you're probably reading the chat there.
I totally was.
I was asking when you relied exclusively on iMIS for your reports, what were the most common, and you know, what if any issues did you have with those?
So our most common reports are probably our membership reports, which consist of all the different membership types that we have and a breakdown of them on a weekly basis, just so people can stay on top of those numbers. Our events and our event numbers as well.
Okay. And what about, so one of the things that a lot of our clients and prospects to a degree is, I don't know if they call it this, but we call it the reporting bottleneck, right? Which is there's one or maybe a small handful of people in each organization that know how to get to certain data, they know how to write the IQAs, or they know how to access the SQL, or you know, to use the report builder that's native to the product. So was and is that a big problem for ACA?
That feels like a huge bottleneck. Yeah, it's usually just our lone soldier, Kevin, who is building the IQAs. And you can imagine that takes a lot of time, and that's a lot of demand from several different people at any given time. And so while it's really helpful for very certain reports, like certain coupon codes or very specific member touch points, it certainly takes a lot more time out of one person than it would for many people to have access.
Yeah.
You can build those IQAs so that others can run them, right? You can set up with different types of criteria, but everyone has very unique needs, and they may want different fields that you don't already have in that IQA. So always running those and always tweaking them. It's a big bottleneck.
So one of the things that I remember we talked about is crystal reports, right? So you had there was this backlog, this a library of crystal reports. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we inherited a huge library of crystal reports, and you know, it was a mess. We had a number that were not being used at all anymore. Others that were. Some were set up for business rules that no longer existed, and just going through those and taking inventory of that was a lot of technical debt, right? To pick up, just to go through. And we want to make those reports, the windows where people can select those reports, we want to make sure that they're streamlined as possible, so people don't have to hunt through, you know, literally hundreds of reports to find the one that they need.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's not efficient for sure.
No.
Okay, so that's actually a good segue. So, MJ, one of the things that we've talked about a lot in this series on it comes up in many of our webinars is the difference between reporting and analytics. And you know, I mean, you can, and we've gone through the exercise of like actually looking at different definitions and seeing which ones we like best. But what do you see as the difference between those two?
Yeah, I think they're both really valuable for very different things. So a lot of times in our case, reporting is going to be the here and now, the moment that we need the data. So for events, for example, if we need, to know the exact number of attendees, that's a snapshot in time. And then it refers back to where we've been. Whereas for us, analysis and analytics is more being able to make strategic decisions based on what's happened, but also being able to anticipate kind of what's to come. So a little bit more forward-looking, forward-reaching. So having kind of that span of, we know what's already happened, but what are we expecting for the future, and where are we kind of going strategically with what we already know?
All right. Good. And then, so yeah, so in the how it was, right, we're talking about those point in time reports, and you provided those to your leadership team, and sort of what happened after that, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we've been kind of reactive in our decision making and kind of emotionally driven, and it's been kind of just, well, how have things been in the past? How do we feel about that? Where do we think we can go? Not necessarily the full picture of, you know, every decision point. So the reporting is more just like catching up to the moment of like, where have we been and what's been kind of the sentiment of what we've done, versus being able to get the full picture of like, how are people feeling about the future, especially in the midst of kind of the changing landscape of the pandemic that has really shifted our being able to like anticipate needs in a better way.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Chip?
Yeah, it's just with, because we're still talking about the how it was portion. The data is it's just that, it's data. It's not analytical, it's not information, and it doesn't put a story to the data at all. And so without it, I find that if you're just running day-to-day numbers, like that becomes kind of like a surface level approach to your data.
All right.
You can get trapped in the vanity metrics of just seeing numbers just to see them and not really having the full story behind them. Not careful.
Yep. Totally agree. You guys have another hour webinar on just that. So yeah, we should put links to these things in there. Anyway, okay, cool. So that's how it was, right? You know, important to note that this is not like an iMIS is terrible webinar. This is an iMIS is really good, and here are some ways that you can build on the foundation that that is provided there. And so with that, let's go to how it is, right? So what is happening now? So on the screen here, these are just some examples of kind of out of the box visualizations that come with our product Acumen. But really the crux of the how it is more that change of approach from iMIS as the the center of the universe, so to speak. Then now it's for decision making, it's the data warehouse, Acumen in this case, but you still use iMIS for all of that transactional, that day-to-day, the member services and customer services type of transactions. To MJ's point, the right now data, the real-time things that update all the time, probably most of that is going to live in iMIS, but other stuff that is more like strategic business decisions is looks at a longer time frame, anticipates futures, things like that. And most cases, you're going to be better off looking in the warehouse for those kinds of things. So okay, so one of the things that that we talked about leading up to this is new leadership, all right, with ACA. So tell us, sort of like, give us the 30,000-foot view of the changes and the new leadership, and a sense for their role, if any, right, in pushing ACA towards this new culture, right? This data informed decision making. I'll give MJ a first crack at that.
Sure. Yeah, we're in a really unique position and snapshot in time right now, if you will, just in that ACA is kind of reinventing itself. We've had a lot of new leadership come on board, and with new leadership is new initiatives, new ideas, and that means that we're approaching a new strategic planning session coming up in the next few months. And out of that, we expect that there'll be sort of the strategic plan for the organization, but also sort of the operationalized version for staff. And the goal of that is to touch kind of every level of staff so that everyone feels invested and bought into kind of the overarching initiative. And that means that staff need to have a sense for how are they progressing with these initiatives. And that means KPIs for every level of staff. So we're kind of in this period now of there's an overarching strategic, initiative, series of initiatives for ACA, and then there's a level where it comes down to staff and they get to see their impact of how they're, progressing the organization towards these goals. And so we're working towards kind of setting up those KPIs, getting all of our users kind of familiar with data analytics, how to ask these questions, move forward with these numbers, and bring literally every member of staff into the fold in all of these decision-making processes, all of this, progress for the organization.
Yeah. So, and is it fair to say that like each department will have a like real influence and a role in determining their own KPIs? Right?
Absolutely.
And
It'll be a collaborative conversation with leadership among all levels of staff. Everyone in the conversation, I think every voice is equally as important in this process.
Awesome. Chip, anything to add to that?
Just that with new leadership comes new opportunity, right? To kind of reinforce the view we all want to make data and supported decisions, and with new leadership, this is how they get on board, is looking at all the data, and this is how they familiarize themselves. They don't have the luxury of all the institutional knowledge that someone that's been here for 20 years has. So this is what they have to look at. So being able to articulate the story of what's been going on through data is really important.
Interesting. Yeah, that's amazing, right? Because again, we just did a webinar on executive dashboarding and building KPIs, kind of top down, from that strategic plan just a few weeks ago with an iMIS customer, actually. But I think a lot of times what we see is the strategic plan is done by the executives or the board, and it's kind of done in the abstract, and you end up with all of these things that are difficult to measure and that don't necessarily reflect the data that you have available, right, to measure progress on those things. So yeah, it sounds like a really smart way of doing it, and I bet that it will result in not only a really well thought out plan, but something that's readily measurable as well. Okay, so question from Raphael. Where do you get your KPIs? In iMIS or in your data warehouse? And do you use Tableau or Power BI?
Well, A2 sits on Power BI, so yes to Power BI. We toyed around with Tableau a few years ago, and again, it was just kind of a bottleneck of a new technology for people to learn. It didn't really stick as well because it was a little bit less self-service than some of our A2 dashboards. So I would say a lot of our KPIs come just from the legacy, like central source of truth that is iMIS, but we also have those integrations with other external tools. So really, I think it's going to be more of a collaborative conversation of like, what is the goal? And then work backwards from there to, well, how are we measuring that? So it's a work in progress. It's always a conversation, but primarily iMIS, a few other external places as well.
Yeah, so what I would add to that is the source of the data is largely going to be iMIS, right? There's a few other sources that are involved, but essentially, the data warehouse is usually going to be the primary source where you look at the trends in your KPIs and your performance dashboards and all of that. Yeah, as MJ mentioned, Acumen is built on Power BI. So yes to Power BI, but Tableau is also a great tool if you're using if you want to go out and kind of take a DIY approach, right, to launching a data warehouse. You could use the Azure Analytics. You could use AWS, Redshift, for example. You can use Snowflake, and then you have to then go out and get something like Power BI or Tableau to visualize the data on that. Absolutely legitimate if you have the skill sets in house in order to be able to do that. Okay, so how it is, right? So a lot of the times what we're talking about how it is, there's a couple of new things that you can do now that were difficult or impossible to do before. So a couple of things, MJ, what are a couple of specific things or use cases you've been able to do now that were kind of in the damn, I can't remember the Wang computer. I was trying to remember Chip's model again. But right, in those days was maybe more difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. One cool opportunity that we've had kind of more recently is, post-pandemic, it's been a whole new endeavor to source like where our new in-person events are going to be held. So historically, it's really just been kind of melding of the minds, bringing people together, just to ask, like, where have we been in the past? What's worked well? What's kind of been people's perspective of the sentiment? And of course, we can go back to iMIS and look at attendee records, like how many people have come to certain places. But I think now, especially more than ever, you know, people are a little more sensitive to travel. So there's just a lot more kind of sentiment analysis question of like where people are willing to travel, how much they're willing to spend, which is always like a sensitive issue for us for events as well. So in the process of kind of looking to the years to come to start negotiating contracts for new venues, for new places for our in-person events, we were able to actually look to A2, be able to see like kind of a comprehensive map of the country, see kind of where our members are located and what's kind of the most like central source that we could start looking at. Is it the Midwest? Is it the South? We were able to kind of cluster different portions of the country and see what exactly is the travel distance for the majority of our members. Where do we think, you know, based on certain things that are happening kind of more outside of just, you know, the transactional data, like where are people willing to travel now these days? We were able to put together a really enhanced proposition for the next kind of sourcing contract for our events coming up.
Awesome. Anything to add, Chip?
Just I was going to note that I've been playing around quite a bit with our data and looking at our different levels of engagement and what effect they have on our membership churn rates. And with that, we're able to single out certain engagement types that contributed to the lack of a churn. So that helped with retention of members. So it kind of helps change the focus a bit in the conversation around what we should be doing. You know, so in a way, our members are always talking to us. And sometimes analytics is the best way to understand what it is that they're trying to communicate.
Okay. So MJ, tell us about this. Is a super open-ended question, but tell us about the validation process. Right, it was kind of long and maybe arduous, if we're being honest, for your organization. But tell us a little bit about that and what did you learn about your data in the process?
I'm so intimately familiar with this process because it's been my singular task for the past little while. And amidst kind of the new transition of ACA from old leadership to new people coming in, it still resided with me. But I've learned a lot just about, like we kind of alluded to earlier, some of our data governance. It kind of helps us to uncover and shine a light on, well, why are we doing things a certain way? Are there better ways to do things? Are there better ways and processes of storing data, labeling data, cleaning data? It's really taken, you know, partnership with almost every department, just because we've been kind of validating each dashboard, each module one at a time. So it's helped to sit down with certain people leading certain departments and ask them questions about their processes and procedures and help them kind of tailor customized views to what they need and what their goals are. And even just in doing that, I personally have learned a lot about the organization, talked to people in other departments that I may not have talked to about these things before, and just have a way better, more comprehensive view of kind of, I think, where we're heading and how I can be most helpful to each department, each member of staff, frankly, using the dashboards that we built. And it's been a really interesting learning experience. We're kind of coming through the end of validation, and while it has been really long and arduous, I think Chip would probably agree, like we've had really important, valuable conversations along the way, updated a lot of processes that really needed updating and may not have had the opportunity to do so had we not been forced to kind of have these conversations.
There we go. Right, we can put it in the pro side and the con side. Right, it takes a long time. It's a little bit difficult, right? But it's generally stuff that you should be doing anyway. Kind of forces you to do it, which is great. So, okay, so it's not all just right. I mean, it's some things are great, but other things are maybe not as great. Some of are related directly to Acumen, some are not. Right. So Chip, there was one thing we talked about was a specific problem that was related to your data, and I just want to give you a chance to talk about that. I can tell by the chat that there's a few people on here at least that would be interested in this.
Which one are you referring to? The data churn with the auto renewal?
Now this was about the there was a view that was created, the business object that was
Oh, right. So we had a malformed view that I think we inherited from years and years ago, and it was such a drag on our resources that it actually caused deadlocks with other processes, which included, unfortunately, online store purchases. And so whenever this view was called upon, it shut down SQL for a couple of minutes, and then we start running into problems reconciling our bank and iMIS, and so we were able to identify that finally and move away from it and kind of break it apart into separate or more micro views.
All right. Now, on the flip side of that, there was another kind of revelation, right? Again, it's indirectly related to Acumen. It's one of those things that comes out in the process of doing validation and going through some governance. But there was a specific change that you made that had a massive impact. So I want to give you guys a chance to talk about that and see if maybe some other people on the call can benefit from that. Chip, you go first.
Okay. So are we talking about I'm sorry.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Gotcha. Just making sure. Okay. So one of the things that we're looking at when I was talking about that engagement, that we were looking at various levels of engagement, we have a membership churn rate. Now, when I say, keep in mind what I'm about to describe, we may define things a little differently than other organizations, but we had a churn rate of somewhere around 47%. So that sounds very high. But what I mean by that is that we roughly every month, about 47% of members that were set to renew did not automatically renew, or renew, and maybe they came back months later, but we had that 47% number. So we were looking at that, and through analytics, we were able to kind of discover that the auto renewals program that we had lowered that significantly, so much so that it was actually 0.075%. So 15 out of 2,000 enrollees in auto renewal remained. So that changed kind of how we viewed the auto renewal process completely.
Yeah, and as I remember, there was something about students, right? So students were like kind of a volatile group that you had trouble with their renewals, but yet they were the ones that were most interested somehow in the auto renew, and it really like kind of massively improved the churn rate for students. Is that right?
Right. Instead of paying one lump sum every year for membership, it broke it out over a period of time, depending on how they enrolled in it. So it was a more attractive solution to them, and help kind of even out a bit the membership churn rate there.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. This made a big impact on me. I had to like stop and like make sure I heard it correctly when I first heard about this. So I'm curious if anyone listening has tried auto renew, and if not, why not? And if yes, was it successful? Raphael, great questions, by the way. He says, did you say that auto renewal actually hurt your member retention? I don't think so, right? You didn't say that.
No, the opposite. The opposite.
Okay.
So our churn rate dropped from 47%, right? Churn being someone that did not renew. It dropped from in the general population of 47% to those that auto renewed. It dropped to 0.075%.
Wow.
So
amazing,
massive jump.
Yeah, right. And so if you have 91% retention already, then right, this could be an incremental improvement for you, but still, right, from a bookkeeping standpoint and from a workload standpoint, right, with the renewal campaigns and all of that, still, I think a net win. Okay, so then let's quickly for the last few minutes here, let's look ahead a little bit, right? So what do you see as the next steps for ACA? I'll give MJ first crack at this.
I think some of the big next steps for us are we're at kind of varying levels of data literacy in our org, especially just because we've had a lot of people kind of come into the org, a lot of legacy tenured folks leave the org. And so as Chip was kind of alluding to earlier, there are varying levels of knowledge of just kind of like our legacy systems and structures and decisions that have been made. So we're at this kind of point now where it's a fresh start. Everyone is learning this tool. Everyone is kind of learning the importance of data analytics, and we're working on ways to have teams kind of be less siloed, work, cross-organizationally, collaboratively, using their various KPIs to help their departments make better decisions, but also inform other departments to make better decisions. So it's a level of kind of learning how to use these tools, learning how to have important conversations, and teaching staff to always be inquisitive and curious and ask better questions so that we can get kind of better answers for strategic decisions going forward.
Agreed. Just from an Acumen perspective, right? Some of the things that would be coming up for ACA would be most likely, probably some additional modules or data sources, all of that rolling up into really robust engagement, with scoring and everything. And then of course, predictive modeling. So ACA is lucky Chip's already doing a lot of this on his own, but those things can be built into your platform. And in any case, the warehouse is a great source of data, for those things. So what, I'll go to MJ again on this one. What challenges do you anticipate, right? I mean, related to that data literacy specifically, I guess.
I think, you'll find with any kind of change management, there are people that are really excited about it, people that are a little nervous but willing to give it a shot, and people that kind of want to hold out and not necessarily learn new technology, new ways of doing things. And I think our challenge with adoption is kind of meeting everyone where they are and giving people the time and space they need and kind of the information that they need to be able to go on this journey, especially the ones who have been around and maybe done things a certain way for a long time. We're kind of moving away from just doing things the way they've always been done into asking better questions, getting better data, and making more strategic decisions. So I think it's change management for us right now, and we're just kind of learning how to do that together.
All right. Yeah, good for you. All right. So we've not talked about this before, so I'm going to put you on the spot, Chip. So everybody is talking about AI, right, these days. And in fact, that's a big part of where we're taking the Acumen product, things like that will be built in. But I just wanted to get your take on just from looking at ACA as an organization. Is that something that you've considered, talked about? You're already sort of looking into it. Do you have any specific goals or concerns related to AI?
I mean, yeah, we have to look at it, right? AI is a game changer. This is something that we'll all be telling our grandchildren that we remember.
We had the right turn.
Right, like the microwave. But there's a lot of opportunity in associations with AI. I'd say first and foremost, probably your chatbot. There are chatbots out there that are powered by GPT-4 that can scan your website, answer most of your questions, and reduce calls to your call center by 84%. That's amazing. So that's one of the things. And there's redundant processes that you're currently do in-house. HR is a great example of resumes, like going through resumes. So that's something we're looking at. I'm actually part of an AI work group here with our board to look beyond just our association, but how does it affect our world, our professional world, and mental health.
Highly recommend that as a, I know that it's not like you don't have enough committees and work groups and task forces, but that's one that we could probably all benefit from adding. Okay, so let's finish up here. Let's go to some pro tips. And first one is for Chip, who tells us that we should get a data analyst and a business analyst. So Chip, tell us about it. I can't afford that. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, so, well, hopefully they pay for themselves in the long run. But a data analyst is going to help you get a better understanding of your data, and the business analyst is going to be able to leverage that data to kind of feed that strategic core of your company.
Yeah, I would just add to this two things. One is I know that it's not in the budget to go out and hire a brand new data analyst and a brand new business analyst, but two things. One is our most successful customers have someone that's dedicated to this, at least one person, horizontally across their business areas. And the second one is very often the next business analyst or the next data analyst is already on your staff in membership, or they're in marketing. And we have lots of examples of that. So recommend that as potentially as a career move for people as well. At least think about it, right? Okay, so Chip, you said we need to be deliberate about the data that we collect. Why is that important?
So you can't answer, your data can't answer any questions if you're not collecting the right data. So start with the questions that you want to ask, and make sure that you're collecting all that information. It's very common that a CEO will come over and say, well, exactly how many people do we have that fit this particular category? And you say, well, we actually never collected that information. So collect as much as possible. By collecting that information, as long as you're doing it securely, you're doing a favor to your membership.
Agreed. Okay, so MJ, I probably didn't paraphrase this correctly, but stay curious, right? Talked about being inquisitive, right? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, similar to you can't answer the right questions without the data. Like you can't answer your questions without the right questions, right? So ask smarter questions. Challenge what's always been, because what worked at some point may not be working today. And if you just continue to do what's been done for years without asking why, there could be better ways to do something, and you'll never know it if you're not curious and inquisitive about why things are being done, what's kind of changing on the horizon, and how can we kind of adapt to that.
Totally agree. Okay, and then what about our leaders, right? They have to take some action, right? They have to take some decisions and take some actions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the case for association is that staff who work kind of in their respective departments know a lot of the ins and outs of like very specific things that are happening, but leadership is kind of driving the ship, right? So they're making the strategic decisions for the org, and it's a partnership between staff and leadership for staff to ask the right questions and leadership to be able to answer those questions. So having the right data, asking the right questions help to make better strategic decisions based on where we're going, what we're doing, and it touches every level of staff. Every role is important in these decisions.
Awesome, thanks. Chip, last one. This could be a t-shirt.
Yeah, expand on your systems, don't customize them. Don't try to bend your system to the point that it breaks. Expand upon it, connect other systems to it, and something that, of course, it doesn't affect your upgrade path.
Awesome. Okay, great tips. So have a couple things coming up. This is a new program called Jobs of Tomorrow. It's 24 episodes in all, but 3 of them are featuring A2 with customers, and they're specifically related to data. You can find those 3: turning data into gold, data engineering, and becoming a data analyst, right? This is how you can find that new data analyst that's in your membership department. So highly encourage you to check that out. Once you reach our site, you can find our 3 episodes, and then there are also links to the overall program. And if you want to learn more about Acumen AI, you can find us here. So I wanted to thank MJ and thank Chip for all the great insights that you provided today, and thank everyone for their participation and their great questions. There is one question in the Q&A from Robin that we did not get a chance to answer, but we'll reach out and get that answered via email. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day and hope to see you again on our upcoming webinars. Take care.